Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Well, so many couples have challenges from time to time, and we know it comes down to that word, communication. But everybody communicates differently. We're going to help strengthen your relationships today in looking at the different communication styles that we all have and how to navigate through that. She helps people with this all the time, couples, individuals. She's an amazing psychologist. Dr. Ann Creekmore is back with us. How are you?
Good, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. I know there's a test out there, like a personality profile that you can take for love languages. Maybe it's 5 love languages the categories that we all fall into. I've never done it, but and I should, as all of us should. But let's look at some of the different ways that people communicate in terms of their love languages.
Sure. Yeah, I love that test. I get almost everybody, couples to come in, even family members sometimes when they're having issues between a child and a parent or whatever, just to know what the other person's love language makes a big difference. It's a free quiz that you can just do on your phone for a couple of minutes or the computer. And what it does is called the 5 Love Languages Quiz, and they're generally free, and what it does is you answer these questions, kind of just go with your first impression. And, it'll say things like, do you like gifts more or hug more, and so on. And then it will score it up on these 5 areas that make people feel loved. And it will break it down so in a rank order from the top, to the bottom, and even give percentages. Like I always goes with the top 2 as the one that really makes the person feel loved. But sometimes the top 3, if it says they're all 27%, the top 1, 2, and 3, well, then all 3 would be important. And the bottom 2, the 6 and 17%, we don't worry about as much. The problems come in. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, keep going. I'm gonna ask you what your love language is, but we'll get to that.
Right, because you said you haven't taken it yet. Well, we'll have to wait, and then when you take it, then I'll share mine and yours, and we'll have another little session on this.
Well, sure, but we all know what we need, right? I can tell you, for me, I am somebody who likes physical touch. I'm kind of cuddly.
That's one for sure.
I like to be appreciated. And it could just be those words like,
Exactly.
Thank you for doing that, or I appreciate you. To me, that's very important.
Exactly. And those are 2 of the 5. The one you're talking about, physical touch, is one of the 5. And that's like, any kind of physical affection, it could be a hug, a kiss, a pat, holding hands or cuddling, whatever. The other one you mentioned is called, on the test or quiz, is called words of affirmation. So when someone says some kind of compliment about, I love you, or you're doing a great job, or something positive, about yourself, those are the words of affirmation. The other 3 ones, if we would just segue in, so that's cool. The other ones are gifts. Some people actually like gifts as and some people like acts of service. Acts of service are not just like divided your chores up and the person is doing their chores properly, division of labor. It doesn't really have anything to do with that. It has to do with when you perceive the other person's kind of distressed in some way, needs some help at that moment, you pitch in right then and there to help them with something and just kind of lighten their load. And so that is what an act of service is versus the chores division. And then there's quality time. And quality time, and of course, we all like quality time, with people, our friends or people we love, want to spend some time. But people who have a high need for quality time, I call this is just my way of putting it. I call it a blessing and a curse, because it takes more. The curse part of it is that it takes more time than these other things. I mean, you can make a compliment quickly, or give a hug quickly, but quality time, from my personal experience working with couples, you really have to spend almost a couple of hours, at most every day of the week with the person for them to get that feeling of being loved through quality time. I kind of call it, quote, worthless hanging out, like we used to do when we were kids, and we would get with our friends and we're just hanging out. It doesn't cost anything.
Right.
We're getting along, we're accepted, and we're doing, we're having our time together. But people who need quality time, it's a blessing if you do that. I mean, I've literally seen couples where there'd been infidelity, but the person betrayed needed quality time. And when they found out, the other partner found out that they needed the quality time, started doing it, all was forgiven. I mean, it was
Wow.
like a miracle. That's why I say, but you really have to put in the time, and it has to be amicable, congenial time. You can't have an argument in the middle of quality time or say something critical about someone during that time frame. Otherwise, it's just cross it out. That wasn't quality time. But pretty much you have to do it like every day of the week, maybe like the fourth day, you take a day off. And then, but if you don't do it by the next day, it's almost like an addiction, the quality time for people, where if they don't get that, they start to feel mistrusting. Like, does this person really love me, care about me? They start feeling jealous. Are they thinking about somebody else? And it really will come into arguments, irritability, like, how people, if they're in withdrawal from some sort of addiction, kind of, they say, hanging on by their fingernails. Well, it's almost like that with people with quality time. If that haven't gotten that couple hours just watching a show together or whatever it is for your quality time, or running to the grocery store together, then they're feeling mistrustful, and there could be arguments.
What do you do in a situation? Because I feel this is a big one.
Uh-huh.
The physical touch, the affection. What if you
Uh-huh.
have one person that's their thing? They
Uh-huh.
like to give hugs, get hugs, but the other person's really not so much the same way. How do you navigate that one?
That's a really good problem that you brought up, that happens with couples a lot. People tend to do for the other person what they think love is, what they feel love is. So they're, a person who likes acts of services is just all the time helping out with this little thing or the other. And maybe the other person's their rating on acts of service is the lowest one. It's real nice to have a little help, but it doesn't make them feel loved at all. Likewise with physical touch, or any of them, when there's a discrepancy, it's not an irreconcilable difference in incompatibility, but it is an incompatibility when one has high need for physical touch, and the other one, when you do, they do their little quiz, they find it's at the bottom. It just doesn't mean that much to them. So basically, say if they're in therapy, I'm doing couples therapy, we would go over this and say, hey, this is a problem area, because that you don't perceive the physical touch as that important. So you don't automatically do it, the person who has it low on there. And then the other one, this is the only, the top thing is going to make them feel some love. So guess what? The homework is between time, one partner increases what, the ones that are important, the top two for their partner, and the other one does the same thing. And it may be, just something you have to make an active effort. Realize that, hey, if when you're watching the show and you sit close together, or you're taking a walk and you hold a hand, or when you leave and you give a hug and a kiss, this person, you've done their love for the day. And you just have to realize that, that's what you do to convey the love in the way that they're going to perceive it as love and feel the love.
Is it ever a situation where you're doing something to show the other person, but it's not really what you want? Are you giving up some of you? I'm trying to explain this better, that
Okay. Mm-hmm.
you're not being authentic to yourself. Like, let's go back to the affection thing. One person loves affection, the other person doesn't. this person over here may just do it, just to I'll give you a hug, whatever, blah, blah, but they're not really being authentic to themselves. Is that a problem?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think that it's kind of like, I kind of compare people to it like a TV. Like if you want your partner to feel the love, right? So you do those things that are going to make that person feel love and you feel the connection. Like if you looking at your TV and you got your remote and you want to turn it on, you start pressing volume, nothing's going to happen. You start pressing channel, nothing happens. You got to push the power button. Likewise, you want to have a good relationship with someone, you've got to convey the love in the manner that they would even perceive it as love and take it that you're caring about them. So you're just making that extra effort to do it the way, because, when you're in a relationship, it's not like you're by yourself. You're not clones. You're not going to be, everything is identical. And you just have to kind of compromise sometime in relationship to have a healthy relationship.
What do you hear more often from couples or people in relationships that have challenges? Is it the physical thing? What do you hear the most?
On the types of problems that people
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I've been doing tons of couples therapy for decades. So it's hard for me. I mean, it really runs the gamut. Is there any ones in particular, though, you want me to talk about of types? I mean, a lot of what I see, it could be anything. I mean, it could be infidelity, arguments about different topics, and, just any kind of differences. A lot of times it's something is happening that is getting triggered. They're getting triggered, something from their past. So they maybe take things a certain way. Their communication is bad, the way they express, not bad, that's not a good word, but it's ineffective. There are different types of communication. There are three that are healthy and three that are unhealthy and one that's more healthy. So sometimes people can be passive. It's kind of unhealthy. They bottle up everything. They don't really share. And then it gets to the point where maybe they get verbally aggressive. They start making you messages telling the person off. So they don't know how to really express, or maybe they bottle up and passively act like the other person has all their not rights to have their needs met, and they don't, to the point that's built up. And then maybe they get passive aggressive. They kind of indirectly, kind of ignore the person or what the person wants, or, act a certain way that make them realize I'm mad at you, but the other person doesn't even know what is bothering them. So kind of like cutting your nose off to spite your face. All you do is get some anger back, and the other person don't even know what you need. So a lot of problems can be communication problems, just basically different personality styles that they're not able to actually communicate healthily and come to win-win negotiations. So things never really get resolved.
How about money? That seems to be
Yes,
a big one.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Money, sex, children, these kind of things. Yes, money can be a definite one. Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate that? I have a friend that I believe that was one of the major issues in their divorce, where one would spend a lot of money, the other one would be a little more careful. How do you strike that blend?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would get them to communicate if I were working with them to communicate, and healthily take turns. One express maybe what the topic is or the concern. Probably the person who's worried about the money would be the sender first. And then the listener would if you're doing healthy, polite, tactful communication, the active listener's job is just simply to understand the other person, paraphrase it, parrot it back, saying, I'm hearing you say you're really worried about the money, and then saying, hey, it's not my intention to create a problem, and I'm sorry, until you finally, both sides get to express, they take turns, and then the other one, they flip, and one becomes the sender, the other, the active acknowledger, listener, until they get it down to the point of hearing what both think about money. I mean, people bring in things from their families of origin about money, or people may. And so then they have to kind of think, well, what's really important to me about money? What can I let go, and try to find a win-win on this topic.
That's a great point you bring up, in that it could be they brought it to the relationship. There could have been issues even when somebody was a kid and there was a money issue in the family, and now whatever direction they go in terms of money surfaces in the marriage, and that could be any problem.
Exactly right, and many times it's that, or it's triggering something from the family. Could you just triggering that? Well, my parents never really listened to me about what I wanted, and so then when you say don't spend money, or you say I have to spend money, you're not listening and caring about me. Like my parents didn't really care what I needed. Is getting triggered, and all that pain of being kind of neglected is just coming out around in a sense, a superficial issue that may not be as big as it seems to be. It's just triggering the past pain.
I would imagine too, and this could manifest in many different areas, but let's say one person in a relationship wants to spend money, the other one is not on board for that, but the one that wants to spend it may have had some control issues in the past and feels that they're being controlled. It's not even about the money.
Exactly. It may be. I mean, and sometimes people who have a bipolar versus a unipolar depression, the unipolar depression may not be spending that much because they're depressed and, sleeping a lot and not, but someone with bipolar who knows how to get themselves out of the depression through spotting something shiny and putting the running shoes on and chasing it, they spend money. That's one of the symptoms of having some bipolar, is overspending. And so it can be sometimes something like that may come up, that the person, has that's kind of an addictive lifestyle, sure. Just, spending some money to feel better. That has to be addressed. It's kind of in the individual.
How about trust? When that is breached in a relationship, there's some major problems going on there. How do you regain that trust? And is it even, I'm sure possible that you can't, depending on what happened, right?
Absolutely. I mean, really, one of the first things when you're doing couples therapy is, to hear what's bothering them, what they want, their goals are, but also to find out if they're committed to the relationship, to ask them, the therapist asks them, well, are you committed to working on this? Do you want this to work out? Are you committed to do? And so if both people are committed and want the relationship, then of course, then it's, and if one doesn't, well, you really can't do anything. So say you have both of them and there's been infidelity, but they both really want to work on it, then there's a good chance of success. And like I mentioned earlier, that, I've had couples where it turned out when they did the 5 love languages that the betrayed spouse had needed quality time. And once that actually started to happen, they forgave everything. And so,
wow.
It was like a miracle. And so, you just have to kind of work and see.
Wow. The trust thing is challenging. I've talked to, a number of couples where there was some infidelity or there was a breach of trust.
Right.
And there many times you have that situation where somebody's always looking over their shoulder, like, I wonder, it might be low level mistrust, but it's always, I believe once it's breached, it's always going to be there.
Right. Yeah. So it's something that affected the innocence of the relationship, but yet, like with everything else, we can use our cognitive behavioral positive mind skills, and we can work on, the party that feels has been hurt. If their love is there and they are, up to their love languages, and then the idea would be to work on trust, and that in the person who was betrayed. Well, one of the things I do with my hypnotherapy is love and trust suggestions. If that, when I'm going to do hypnosis with somebody, which is really putting yourself in they put themselves in meditation with my facilitating, and then happy water scene, and they're following their breath, good energy coming and, letting out the cares. And then we've decided on about 4 things that I'm going to tell them. One of the positive suggestions is love and trust. It's a thing about that. When you see people, you don't feel rejected. You don't, you see love and you send love and you're feeling it from people. It's more to it than that. But essentially, it's a love and trust suggestion, and it really does work very well. Because the way hypnosis works is that if it fits with your value system, you'll absorb it, be able to do it rather, because you won't have locked yourself out of it. Like when you're in beta, and you're a higher level of your brain waves, you're doing and thinking and you can be arguing yourself out of it. Well, I couldn't possibly trust her again or him again because of this happening. But when you're in this nice relaxed state and you're hearing that, yes, you're just taking each moment's new, each moment's unique, and you're seeing the warmth coming and feeling the warmth, it really can help a person to get back to a good trust level.
Do you find very often that couples will seek somebody that is not them or things that they would want to be? For example, you have 2 people, one is an extrovert, one is an introvert, but it kind of works, because I guess one seeks the introvert, looks at the extrovert and said, wow, I wish that was me. And I'm not. She handles all the scheduling and plans and togetherness. And the other one, do you find it works that way sometimes?
Sure, like opposites attract.
I guess so.
Yeah, sure. And sometimes that can be a good thing. It's kind of like if one person's handy and mechanical and the other one isn't, it's kind of nice to have the handy mechanical one in the house, right? To take care of some things. Whereas maybe there's something else. Maybe you're the social one and you've managed to get some nice family get-togethers or friend get-togethers that the other person, would be busy doing their own thing and not having much of unless you did that. If they balance each other, it can work really well.
Yeah, I would assume as long as the understanding is there of who is what, and they work with each other, I guess, on their love languages and all of that as well.
Exactly. And have that communication,
Right.
so the healthy communication around things.
And the understanding. So let's say if you're the extrovert and you want to go to a party with your spouse who's an introvert, that person might say, I'm not really into it today. You need to understand, you got to cut some slack.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's so important in relationship to allow people to be themselves and be free.
I truly believe that people entering relationships should go to therapy counseling before they even get into it.
Absolutely. Everybody can use some counseling.
Oh.
Something, self-discovery, because we don't even know the things that are triggering us. And
100%. Yeah. Just to know what you're in for, number one, but number two, how to navigate with that person. How do we connect with you? If somebody wants to, and by the way, you have 2 great books. A lot of this stuff is in those books. How do we find you?
I actually have another book too. I haven't mentioned this too. I have several other books, and one of them relates to what we talked about today. So I'll just mention it. It's called Find Mr. or Mrs. Right, The Perfect 10. Like count to 10, the perfect, or the old movie, The Perfect 10.
Sure.
And, it's about what to look for in a potential mate. Quote, marriage material kind of thing, or so anyway, that's there as well. And they're all on Amazon and other places, but you can find me through Psychologist in Virginia, spelled out, Psychologist with an S, plural, in Virginia, spelled out.com. That has my numbers and email and some of my books, and you can just start there because they're in my maiden name, so it's kind of a pseudonym, but it'll be all on there.
Wow. How interesting that we're talking about relationships and you had a book. I had no idea a book about that. Wow. Incredible.
It came up.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
always great talking with you. We always learn so much, and I appreciate you and look forward next time we get together.
Me too. Thanks for everything.
Oh, thank you. We're coming right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.